Something strange is happening on Special Forces, and it's got everyone talking. Cody Brown has returned to television, but this time the spotlight isn't just on his physical strength. It's on the unsettling energy he brings wherever he goes. From shocking cast reactions to whispers of manipulation behind the scenes, nothing about this comeback feels ordinary. Stay with me, because what his castmates just revealed changes everything you thought you knew about Cody Brown. When Cody Brown stepped onto the set of Special Forces, it wasn't just another celebrity trying to prove themselves in a grueling reality competition. It felt like the beginning of a redemption arc that no one asked for. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere. A mix of confusion, curiosity, and quiet tension rippled through the cast, because while most of them didn't recognize him at first, those who did kept their distance, unsure if the man who once ruled a reality TV empire built on chaos could really change. Cody moved with the confidence of someone trying to rewrite his story, as if he believed that climbing mountains and pushing his limits would somehow wash away years of controversy. The others noticed his determination, but also the strange intensity that surrounded him, like he was powered by something more than adrenaline. He barely slept, he trained harder than anyone, and he spoke with a forced optimism that didn't quite match the energy in his eyes when one of the contestants, Bri, a podcaster, tried to connect with him during downtime. The moment quickly turned cold. She mentioned her career, and Cody laughed, not out of humor but disbelief that podcasting was her qualification. His words stung not just because they were dismissive, but because they revealed something deeper. A glimpse into the ego that had defined him for years. The same voice that once spoke over everyone around him was still there, dominating every space he entered. Bri later said that if she had known who he was, she would have handled things differently. But in that moment, she thought he was just socially awkward, unaware of how condescending he sounded. She didn't know the layers of history behind that arrogance, the failed relationships, the fractured family. The headlines filled with chaos. All she saw was a man trying too hard to impress everyone and failing to see the discomfort he created around him. Some of the others whispered about his behavior, noticing the way he never seemed to pause for anyone else. Every challenge became a one-man show, as if he was performing for a camera that no longer cared. Cody charged up hills, carried extra weight, and pushed himself beyond reason. His energy was unnatural, almost mechanical. Some even joked that he had a secret stash of caffeine hidden somewhere, but beneath the laughter was unease. They couldn't explain what fueled him, but they could feel that it wasn't just determination, it was desperation. And in that desperation was a pattern anyone who had followed his past would recognize. Cody thrives when he's being watched. He feeds off the attention, good or bad. And on this show, surrounded by strangers who didn't know his past, he saw a clean slate, a new audience to manipulate. But the cracks began to show as soon as the group realized that teamwork wasn't his strength. Every mission turned into another opportunity for Cody to outshine everyone, and no matter how many times the instructors told him to think of the team, his focus always drifted back to himself. He wanted to be the hero, the one the cameras would remember, and for a while he almost convinced them that he was. But behind those forced smiles and motivational speeches, a storm was building. Because while Cody tried to reinvent himself as the man reborn, others were quietly watching, noticing the same old habits emerge, the same need for control, the same self-importance disguised as leadership. And the more he tried to hide it, the more obvious it became. By the end of the first week, the camp had started to divide those who believed in his so-called transformation, and those who saw right through it. They couldn't all be wrong. Could they? The truth about Cody was starting to unravel, and the question on everyone's mind wasn't whether he could survive the challenges. It was whether the man he was trying to become could survive the truth about who he really is. Stay tuned, because what happens next on that mountain left everyone questioning if they'd been living beside a man or a mask all along. As the days on Special Forces grew longer, and the challenges pushed everyone to their breaking point, the calm facade that Cody Brown had built around himself began to crumble. The team started to see glimpses of the man behind the polished charm, the one who had always needed to be in control and couldn't handle being told no. Robbie, one of the contestants, described it best. He said Cody acted like an overexcited 12-year-old, constantly blurting out whatever came to his mind, giving advice nobody asked for, and inserting himself into every conversation. He wanted to be seen as the mentor, the motivator, the strong man everyone looked up to. But instead he came Across as someone desperate to dominate the space around him, the cast couldn't decide if it was arrogance or insecurity that drove him. Maybe it was both. Bri, who had already felt dismissed by him, kept her distance, but watched as others began to experience the same treatment. Cody would interrupt them during meals, correct their techniques, even criticize how they handled their exhaustion. It wasn't leadership, it was control. And when someone questioned him, he'd turn defensive fast, his words cutting in ways that left people silent. Robbie later admitted that during their first physical challenge, he thought something was off. Cody's energy was beyond normal. He was sprinting up and down the mountain with the speed of someone, half his age, zipping past professional athletes as if gravity didn't apply to him. It wasn't just impressive, it was unnerving. Some joked he had boundless stamina. Others whispered theories that made everyone uneasy, but no one dared to confront him directly because every time he caught them watching, he'd smile that same strange smile that never reached his eyes. The instructors noticed it too. How Cody refused to slow down. How he seemed addicted to proving he was better than everyone. Even when it hurt the team, his need to be number one outweighed everything else. That same pattern was familiar to anyone who had watched his previous life unfold. A man obsessed with being right, with winning, with being admired. But on Special Forces, there was no audience to edit, no script to control, no way to spin the narrative once the cameras stopped rolling. His true nature seeped through in small moments when others were resting. Cody paced like a caged animal, muttering under his breath, replaying challenges and mistakes as if he couldn't stand not being perfect. It was that relentless energy that started to unsettle the group. Jesse, who had entered the show hoping for a second chance himself, found Cody's attitude impossible. To Reed, he said that when Cody introduced himself, he seemed harmless, almost awkward. But later, when the episodes aired and Jesse saw what Cody had really said behind his back, that awkwardness turned into something darker. Cody had mocked him under. His breath made jokes that weren't meant to be funny. It was small, but it revealed everything about how he viewed people around him as props in his performance, rather than equals. And yet somehow there were still those who defended him, claiming he was misunderstood, that he was trying to grow, that this was his moment of redemption. But redemption requires remorse, and Cody never showed any. When someone tried to open up about their struggles, he turned the conversation back to himself. When others needed encouragement, he offered competition. He wanted to be the savior without ever saving anyone. The cracks were widening, and the more they showed, the harder he tried to hide them, through overachievement and forced positivity. It was like watching a mask slip slowly, one expression at a time, until you realized there was nothing real underneath. He wasn't a villain in the classic sense, more like a mirror reflecting whatever people wanted to see. Some saw strength, others saw chaos, but those who looked long enough began to see the emptiness behind it. All the pattern of control, manipulation, and charm that had followed him for years was back, and now playing out in real time. In a new setting, the tension among the cast reached a boiling point. Whispers spread about who he really was, what his history meant, and whether they were being fooled by someone who knew exactly how to play the redemption game. And as one castmate put it, every time he smiled, it felt like he was rehearsing for a role that never ended. That was the moment they realized maybe this wasn't about surviving the show. Maybe it was about surviving Cody himself. And the next twist would leave everyone speechless. By the time the final week of Special Forces arrived, the energy around Cody Brown had changed completely. What started as quiet curiosity had turned into something heavier, a silent tension that followed him everywhere. People no longer laughed at his outbursts or humored his endless talking. They watched him carefully, unsure of which version of him would show up that day. The man desperate to prove himself, or the man who couldn't stand being questioned. Cody's teammates had grown tired of the contradictions, his kindness that felt rehearsed, his humility that only appeared when cameras were on, and his apologies that came too late to matter. Bri had restarted her podcast shortly after filming wrapped, and when she spoke about her experience, she didn't hold back. She said that looking back, she realized how dismissive he was, not just toward her, but toward every woman on set. How he seemed to thrive on making others feel smaller, while convincing himself it was motivation. She admitted that at first she thought he was harmless, even misunderstood. But after learning more about his past, she felt differently. She realized that every word, every smirk, every shrug was part of a pattern that had existed long before any of them met him. Meanwhile, Robbie tried to stay neutral, insisting that everyone deserved a second chance. But even he couldn't ignore what he saw. He described Cody as a man constantly chasing something he could never catch: approval, validation, admiration. It didn't matter from whom. As long as he got it, and when he didn't, he spiraled. His focus shattered, his patience gone. The instructor saw it too during the final challenge, when teamwork mattered most. Cody went rogue, ignoring orders, and pushing ahead, convinced that he alone could save the mission. What should have been a moment of unity turned into chaos. Teammates shouted for him to stop, but he didn't hear them. Or maybe he did and chose not to listen when the challenge ended. Instead of celebrating, he blamed everyone else for holding him back. It was the breaking point. Even those who defended him began to see that his version of growth was just another performance, another role in the long-running story of Cody versus the world. When the cameras stopped rolling and the cast reunited. Months later, the conversations shifted from physical endurance to emotional scars. Many admitted they had no idea who Cody was before filming, but after seeing the episodes, they were stunned by how different he appeared on screen compared to real life. He had managed once again to rewrite his image, this time as the misunderstood father, the man seeking redemption, the one trying to rebuild his life. The audience watching at home had no idea how deep the manipulation went, and that was the most haunting part. It wasn't what Cody said or did during the show that lingered. It was the way he made people doubt themselves, the way he turned his flaws into sympathy, and his arrogance into confidence. The illusion worked on some, but not on everyone. Bri called it out for what it was: a cycle of reinvention that never ends. Because true change doesn't happen when the spotlight is on it. Happens in silence when no one's watching, and that's something Cody never learned. So as new fans discover him on this show, believing they're witnessing transformation, those who truly know his history can only shake their heads, knowing that behind every charming smile is a story untold. A story of power control and the endless chase for redemption that never comes. But here's where it gets unsettling. Rumors began to swirl that his next move was already in motion. Whispers of another show, another chance, another reinvention. Because Cody doesn't stop when the credits roll. He starts over, and somewhere out there, another group of strangers is about to meet the same man behind a new mask. And the question that remains isn't whether Cody will change, it's how many times he can pretend before the world finally sees who he's been all along. Cody Brown's story on Special Forces isn't just another reality show moment. It's a reflection of something deeper, the illusion of change without the substance. To back it up, for years he's lived in a cycle of reinvention, moving from one spotlight to another, reshaping himself for a new audience every time the narrative shifts. But the core remains the same: behind the smile, behind the drive, behind the speeches about second chances, there's a man who still struggles with accountability, still searches for control, still finds validation only in being seen and admired. It's easy for viewers to believe they're watching a redemption arc, that the long hours, the physical pain, and the tears under pressure are proof of transformation. But what if it's just another act? Another performance crafted for sympathy and applause? Because true growth doesn't demand attention. It doesn't broadcast itself. It simply exists quietly, firmly in the actions that follow. And for Cody, those actions have yet to arrive. People like Bri and Robbie, who shared the experience with him, know that beneath the surface there's a pattern that repeats over and over: the charm, the control, the contradiction. It's what makes him compelling and unsettling all at once. And while some will continue to root for his comeback, others will keep their guard up, remembering how easily he turns a story into a stage. The takeaway from all of this isn't just about Cody. It's about how easily the audience can be pulled into a story that feels real, but isn't; how redemption can be performed, how sincerity can be sold, and how charisma can mask a deeper truth. Because sometimes the greatest illusion isn't what happens on television. It's believing that the person behind it has truly changed when maybe they never did at all.